Aloha everyone, young and old, and thank you for watching our program today. Sparky Would Go, a Kauai talk show for the whole family. United States Senator Spark Matsunaga was born on October 8, 1916, and raised on Kauai, Hawaii. Born Masayuki Matsunaga, the beloved Sparky nickname was given to him by his elementary school friends. Sparky liked the name so much, though, that he legally added it to his birth name after World War II. If we emphasize the life and works of our greatest contributors, people will come to realize that moral courage is bravery of the highest type, and America will be called the champion of peace. Sparky was a political visionary who dedicated his life to peace and a united world. This program series honors those people and organizations who are living examples of how to persevere through the hard times, showing us that our lives are worth living. All right, let's meet our first guest. Maliko.
Hi.
Maliko, I'm going to ask him to introduce himself, but I wanted to tell you that I have known Maliko for a while now, and what impresses me so much about you, my friend, is your willingness and your openness to talk and to share about your life. And so that's why we asked you to be our first guest on our talk show, Sparky Would Go. And we thought, well, gee, Maliko, he could really get us going, because the theme of our show is stories of resilience and stories of bouncing back. So would you like a cup of tea, my friend?
Yeah, I would love a cup of tea.
Well, this is Sparky's teapot from his office in Washington, D.C., so we'll have a little toast here with Sparky's tea. Today the tea is a rose petal. Yeah.
Well, to Sparky.
To Sparky, yes.
And to resilience.
Yes, and hopefully we're going to be an interesting show today, because I know there's a lot of stories of resilience on this island right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Oh. Rose petal, and there's some turmeric in there too, if I remember right. I think of, these early years, and we even remember Sparky's early years times. They were rough and ready times for many people. And so this is our introduction, I guess you'd say, as a young person, to the idea of bouncing back, or the resilience. So tell me about your mother. Was she a bouncing back kind of person? Was she a resilient person?
Well, she raised 6 kids by herself, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandmother helped quite a bit. So it was interesting. She went back to college when she was 60 years old, and she graduated with her bachelor's from St. Peter's College in Jersey City at 65.
Wow.
Yeah, so
wow.
that was like bouncing back.
Wow, that is bouncing back.
Yeah.
I mean, to see yourself as a lifelong learner at 60 years old.
Yeah. She went back to college, and then she got a degree in teaching, but she didn't want that full responsibility, so she was a teacher's aide in some of the pretty tough schools. One time she said, I couldn't believe it, the audacity of that boy. They were going from, they ring the bell, and then they go from one classroom to the other, and she's in the hallway, and this one little, boy says, Miss Kowalski, I'm gonna push you down the stairs. And my mother says, oh, well then you're coming with me.
Yeah, right. Well, teaching was different in those days as well. I mean, the teachers were more personal. I grew up in a time when corporal punishment was allowed. Well, you didn't necessarily, weren't feeling the effects of it unless you were in Catholic school. But we all got corporal punishment at home. I mean, we were under the threat of corporal punishment pretty regularly. I'm not so sure. I mean, as an educator myself, I've learned that physical punishment is not necessarily the worst thing that can happen to a person, and that actually, abusive, psychological abuse and emotional abuse are actually longer lasting kinds of problems that people live with and have to overcome in their lifetime. That's another story and another day. So Maliko, you're not born in Hawaii, but you're a Kama'aina for sure.
Been here 13 years now.
Yes.
I arrived July 4th, 2008.
Yes, and you're from?
Jersey City, New Jersey.
Jersey City, New Jersey. Well, I love the East Coast, and you grew up there in times, I'm assuming, in the 1950s and 60s were your childhood?
Yeah, 60s. I was born in 56.
Yes.
And yeah. So I was there when everyone was going to Vietnam. I was younger at the time, and when they came back, they were our mentors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
And your family was a large family?
There were 6 children. Yeah, my mother had, in her family, she had 11 siblings. So we had a lot of cousins.
Tell me this, I always ask this question, were you born in a hospital?
I was.
See, now our generation may have been the first that almost everyone was born in a hospital. Because I know my parents' generation, they were not. They were born at home or, you know, in a small midwife's location.
Right.
So, yeah, we were the first ones to be actually, most of our generation were born in hospitals, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 6 siblings, and what order of sibling are you?
I was number 2.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And did you have to take on the number 2 responsibilities of taking care of the family on occasion?
No, there was a lot of trouble in my neighborhood and in my home. Mm-hmm. And so I just was surviving, you know, so I was finding my own ways to survive as a kid, getting through school and things like that.
So you were in an urban setting, in a rough and ready neighborhood, or were you middle class, or were you upper class?
Middle class, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My mother left my father when I was 4, and she took her 4 kids to Jersey City into her mom's home, and we went from there.
Yeah.
We grew from there.
Were you inspired to become a teacher because of your mother's great example?
No, that happened, you know, even 15 years after I was teaching. No, I was just, I started martial arts 3 weeks before I turned 14 on March 7th, 1970. Went up to Journal Square and, you know, and I just loved the arts. And it was a place where I was getting recognition, because I used to fight a lot as a little kid. And when I went into the dojo, we were fighting all the time, you know, because that's a part of it, the self-defense. And with that, we didn't have the desire outside to fight, you know. It's kind of like, it's always like it's used for self-defense only. But at 15 years old, maybe a year and a half later, I remember being often in front of a class of 20, 25 kids my age, teaching them.
Wow.
And so I didn't know then that I was being groomed to be a teacher. And so when I was 16, I got my mother signed me up for the Navy, because I wanted to get out of the neighborhood, and plus I wanted to see the world and get, you know, and get a career. And so I turned 17, and 18 days later, I was off to boot camp.
Wow.
Yeah, Chicago, Illinois.
Well, you know, I think there was an attitude there where we, you know, joined the military for those reasons, you know, to go out and see the world. So we're not thinking in our minds that, you know, we're going to, you know, necessarily preserve the country or save the United States from anything that's bad out there in the world. But so your choice to become, to join the Navy and go out into the world with your mother's backing, would you say that it helped you or hindered you in your life?
Oh. Total benefit.
Yeah.
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 I got out early on a breachment of contract, and when that happened, when I got back home into Jersey City, I started teaching karate, and from there I got engaged. We got married, moved up to the countryside. from Jersey City, 50 miles outside of Manhattan. And I started classes there. Everywhere I went, I started classes.
Ah.
So, you know, I lived in New Hampshire, did classes there, Washington, D.C., Mount Shasta, California, extensively in Seattle for 14 years, and also here on Kauai.
You're talking about teaching and becoming a teacher, and you know, Maliko is telling us, you know, that he almost everywhere he went, he set up opportunities to teach, and this came easy for you to do that?
Yeah. I loved teaching.
Right. So, and then the teaching was leading to something more for you, sort of the personal growth. So, could you talk about that a little bit?
I think there's some of the things I've heard from my teachers was that, like one of the practices we would have is look around a room, or if you're outside, look at what you're seeing and take that in, and now go back again and look for what you weren't seeing. And so I use the analogy now that, you know, each and every one of us is like an iceberg, you know, and when you see me, you're only looking at the tip of it.
Sure.
There's so much more in there. When I look at you, so much more.
Right.
Everybody.
Right.
So
well, I want to share with you just one itty bitty thing. Is when I was a teacher, I was working with small children.
Yeah.
And the little 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, they're just as complex as everybody else. And I began to see that you can't make judgments on children based on just your first perception of them, or you're pigeonholing them in particular places. You really have to see each child as complex as every other child, and each child as potentially, you know, infinitely potential. You know what I'm saying? You have to have a really great feeling, and you have to look very closely at, like what you said, what you're not seeing in their world as well. So thanks for that.
Yeah, just subtleties, you know, and just seeing the good that's in people, not so much what they're, you know, not bringing out the difference, or honoring the difference, honoring the uniqueness. Wow, you're not like me. That's pretty cool.
Gosh, I wish I could do that better.
We all do that to some degree.
So your teachers helped you to discover something about yourself.
Well, yeah, I guess if you don't do the work, you won't see the, you know, if you don't climb the mountain, you won't see the view.
I like the wooden sword story that you were telling. That's something that somebody asked you to do that.
To invoke what you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole idea is that my teacher, George Leonard, he wrote maybe 13, maybe 19 books on transformation.
Yeah.
You know, at Esalen, and he was the senior editor for Look magazine. He was also a 4th degree black belt in Aikido, and he was 77 years old, 7 foot tall, 7.1, and to see a guy that big roll on the floor and come up, you're like, what is this guy?
Where did you get that one?
Yeah, super. But you know, everything was about, you know, breaking through rules and, you know, use them as guidelines, but not as, you know, not concrete. That, you know, who we are is always metamorphosing, you know, and even now we can't see it, but cells are dying in my body and other ones are being built in all of us. I mean, it's absolutely a miracle. So if you can, you know, for myself, if I could always focus on that miracle, what am I forgetting now? If I'm getting in a humdrum in my mind, like, whoa, you know, so I put up these centurions. And they're the guards at the gate of my mind. And when I notice that I'm starting to get that stinking thinking or doubtfulness, and I'm questioning myself, then I said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. You know, we're just focusing on.
Yeah, you face for yourself, but as a teacher, you also face for other people. Now, for example, somebody comes to you and you see that they're not open, they're not experiencing the world fully. How do you set about guiding them to where they can, have that resilience or have the strength that you're talking about to really be sovereign and create the experiences in their own life? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, it starts with the beginner's mind. If someone comes in and they are earnest about learning something new, no matter what age, then...
Earnest for learning, I like that.
Yeah, earnest for learning, and you can just keep growing. So what I do is basically, I use the body, I use movement and sound to help people to get into themselves. And when we go over technique and they start to perfect that technique, they're fine-tuning, they're closing the gap between the brain and the body. And more as they become more, you would say, aligned or integrated, then they start coming out. And then acknowledging their growth, improvements, and correcting it where it's a little bit off.
And is there any particular exercise in your repertoire that maybe we could show our audience that, would be like an introduction to that kind of thing?
Yeah. We do one. I'll do it sitting down. But it's even like this here. This gesture could be a gesture of, like if something's really bothering you and you think about what it is, she said that to me, and, what?
Oh, I don't.
and you're squeezing it, and you just got it in there, or, God, I failed that test, or, wow, I shouldn't have ran through that red light, and you're really mad, and you squeeze it in there, and then you just, metaphorically, you're just releasing it. Like we'll go into the body, and we would have one taking off a tight sweater, and it's like just going in like you have magnets and collecting any blockage, any stagnation.
Yeah.
And then when you're coming up here, stagnation in the heart, like I'm not loving, I'm not as kind as I want to be, I'm not as humorous as I normally am or something. So I got to have some kind of blockage. Or mentally, I just can't get through that one thing that he said to me, or that look, or that, gesture, or, you know how it is. And then so when it's coming up, we just, whoo!
Let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, we say, give that to the universe for compost. And let it do its thing,
You
right?
may have just defined this idea of bouncing back, because once it's gone, once you're letting go, that's the downward bounce. And then the next thing you know, you're up and ready for the next thing, right?
Yeah,
because
that's beautiful, right.
when you let something go, for example, you can say something like, okay, let's forget it. But then you really have to forget it. You really have to let it go. You can't come back with, well, let's talk about it again. No, we let it go. It's gone already. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's half of the discipline is to when you push it and let it go, to actually really, truly let it go. And can you give us an example, Maliko, of somebody in your life that you've seen that transformation, or yourself, that you've seen transformation that was kind of mind-boggling, mind-bending? And the reason I'm saying that is because, we're transforming all the time. Like you said, we're living and dying in the moment all the time. But sometimes we go through a life-changing experience. And I'm thinking about the wooden sword story again.
Okay, well, in my case, when I was doing the course at Esalen Institute in California with George Leonard, there was 10 of us accepted to be, to train in this form to be a modern warrior. The definition of a modern warrior is when the sword of a modern warrior cuts, that it gives life, it doesn't take it. And so, and it was all about that transformation, you have to be daring, you have to be strong to want to change. Especially if you're in a place where, your family or the organization or the community that you're in, everybody's maybe has a role or they expect you to be a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
And if you hear a different drum, then, you know, it's about like what Joseph Campbell would say, you got to follow your bliss.
Yeah.
But if you're not strong inside, you're not going to break away. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not going to move out of, you know, like from one country or one city to another city, or from one job to another job. And then you have to be flexible, you know, flexible, because life is it's gonna twist you, you know. It's like they say that when the storm comes, it's the trees that bend the most that survive. And so the hard and stiff is the discipline of death, and the soft and yielding is the discipline of life. That's what we say.
Could you say that again?
Yeah, the discipline of death is being rigid, hard, unbendable, right? So water comes to, you know, tsunami, or the wind comes in, and that one that stands up so tall and resisting, boom, gets knocked over. And the one that bends is the one that, you know, stays.
I'm reflecting on the fact that I spent the hurricane in Kauai State Park. And the trees, I was totally blown away on how much they were rocking and rolling. And the ones that really truly survived, the strongest, were the eucalyptus trees. And they're the ones that rock. Sure, they lost plenty of limbs along the way. But man, that whole rocking and rolling motion you're talking about. So really, flexibility is the secret. I mean, is that why everybody's taking yoga these days?
Yeah, yoga, going to the gym, Pilates, biking, triathlons, everything. Is because in our culture, we're starting to live from here up. Yeah. And that's the balance of it. It's like in nature is always, when I was studying macrobiotics, nature is always creating balance in some way, shape. The wisdom of nature creates some kind of balance in that area. But also, we are nature. Like Robert Frost said, we need nature to free up our nature because we are nature. Well, we don't think about it that way. I'm not nature. Nature's over there.
That's the big problem with our world in the United States is the fact that we've separated ourselves from nature. I always look at the cops and robbers shows, and you're going, wow, wait, what's going on here? The guy's handsome. He's got a gun. He's got a ton of money. He got all the girls. Why don't I like this guy? And it's because he has no relationship to the natural world. He's running around the city doing all this stuff all over the place. He never eats. He never appreciates art. He never sits down and watches a television show. He doesn't admire a plant. He's not walking by a stream. There's nothing I have in common with this guy.
Right.
I mean, of course, he's the hero of whatever it is the Cops and Robbers show is. I have one question that I think may be getting close to what I want to get from our talk show experience, which is, Maliko, is there anything that you worry about? What do you worry about?
Worry? I think about this, and it blows my mind. At my age, 6.5 decades, there's so many times when I look back in retrograde, look back and just see that things that I was worried about or I had anxiety about never happened. And I mean, every day, even now, I just finished producing an online program, 41 videos, 7 hours of content and instruction. And now it's like, oh, is anyone going to look at it?
Oh, yeah.
Is it going to be, so that comes in. And I'm like, look, you just chop wood, carry water. That's the whole idea. Just keep doing the do. If it happens, fine. If it not happen, fine. It's like, we just have to stay in the river. I think it was Robert Redford once said, he says, he never looks back. I never look back. I'm only looking forward. And I'm only creating forward because there's nothing I can do about that. And
you're talking about Robert Redford. My favorite line of his is, look, I'm nobody's story but my own. A reporter was trying to drag a story out of him, right? I'm nobody's story but my own, all right?
Yeah.
And so if you're doing the do, chopping the wood and carrying the water, then that's telling your story, right?
And, you know, I think, and a lot of this, even what we're talking about now, I address in this course, because 50% of it is mental and the other half is physical, right?
Isn't that a Yogi Berra saying?
Is it?
Yeah. 50% of his, and I'm sorry.
It could have been. Hey, Yogi. Yeah. But no, I'll tell you that one point with the sword, with the Boken, and when we went down to the ocean and we invoked into the universe, it was powerful. Each and every person that went up and did their Tenkan and cut, and we all empowered them. Like say, there's whenever two or more gather in the name of the one, there's real power, right? Yeah. So everybody was juicing each other as they were invoking what they wanted. Yeah. The universe has to listen. When you have that much intensity, I mean, there's an intelligence that's around us all the time, even like out here in your garden, you know, and it can feel you. It feels you. If you're open to that, yes, and you realize like you're appreciating the trees for being the trees, and when you have that type of inner gratitude, everything responds. People respond. Things happen. Things happen.
Inner gratitude, Maliko.
Inner gratitude is where it's at.
Yeah, inner gratitude. It's
even for the struggles.
Yeah, the thank you philosophy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to bring our talk to an end, but I want to ask you to share with us something that you give your students or yourself or your clients in terms of advice that that people can hold on to and carry forward, because you know how you remember great things you've heard be said by people, and in a context they'll come up just automatically in your mind. Is there something that you hear yourself continually saying to people to advise them to move forward and bounce back in their life?
I say it to myself, I say it to my daughters, I say it to my students: learn to roll and flow. And by that I mean when the water's coming down and it hits this big boulder, it doesn't stay there and keep trying to, you know, knock it over. It just goes around. It finds, you know, the path of least resistance. Right. So I tell them, look, every day, we don't know. We're going to get hit with the good. And that's, you know, we like the good, right? We're going to get hit with the bad. We don't like the bad, right? And then sometimes it's ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, ugly. We just lost a brother up in, and that was ugly. You know, the way it just went down, and we could just get stuck in that, or it's like you got to roll and flow.
Roll and flow. I like it.
Yeah,
it sounds like rawhide or something, but.
I say we're going to shake, rattle, and roll to rejuvenate our soul.
I like it.
You know, it's like just bringing different things to people. So if someone comes in and they're really athletic, then I'll do more Tai Chi with them or more yoga. And they're like, oh, that's so hard for them. Yeah. You know, now someone else who does the Tai Chi or yoga or a little bit older, and you're asking them to, you know, be a little bit more. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I don't know. But it's like, this is how we expand our repertoire. You know, it's kind of like if you have the yin. The yin is more, the definition would be more expansive, relaxed, resting, subtle, slow, smooth, conscious. The yang is ba-boom. It's, you know, it's power. It's a bolt of lightning. It's a strong word. It's a way. And then so if you could be that loving, kind, cuddly kind of person, and you could be a mother hubba, you know, then you got more. You got a whole bunch of opportunities, and your potential grows. Mm-hmm. And so George Leonard, at the end of the class, when we all graduated, he said, I'm going to leave you with a koan. And as find a way to make peace more vivid in the world, in humanity. Because right now everyone's bang, bang, shoot 'em up. Oh, that's got my attention. And if something's peaceful, you see that little flower going down in the river or something. Oh, that's boring. You know, some people think that way, but it's looking at it. It's just
the word vivid is critical.
Yeah.
Vivid.
In the mind of
making peace vivid.
Yeah.
For me, that's the work with children. It's like, okay, we've got this thing, we've got to say it. How do we say it? Well, what are our options?
Yeah.
Puppets, art, speech, you know. But the thing is to be involved.
Yeah.
Is to step up and be involved, be an active learner there. Thank you.
This is good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you pulled out some nice gems.
No, I mean,
out
just
of the
to
garden.
stay on some kind of course is really sometimes difficult, but with you it's real easy, and we got a lot of stuff put out there too.